You ever get hit with a truth so nasty, so out of pocket that for a second you think, nah, no way the people I love would pull that on me. Yeah, that was me. The night I found out my own husband and my own manager weren't just talking behind my back, they were planning to push me out of my own damn life. And the wildest part? I didn't panic. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry. I just smiled and quietly decided, go ahead, try me. I swear that evening started like any other, me in my cozy kitchen, tea in hand, thinking my biggest problem that night was whether I wanted chamomile or peach lemon. But, you know, how life gets messy, right? When you think you've got the remote in your hand? Right. That's exactly when the universe slapped me across the face. I heard voices, not raised, not arguing, just talking. Talking in that low, careful tone people use when they think the person they're discussing isn't anywhere nearby. And look, I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't creeping in doorways like some soap opera character with curlers in her hair. I legit just walked down the hallway to grab my charger. But the second I recognized the voices, my husband and my manager, something in my gut went cold. You ever feel your heartbeat hit your throat? Yeah, that. I froze right there in the dark and listened. Not by choice, my body kinda just shut down, like even my nerves knew something ugly was coming. My husband said, "She's slipping. This is the perfect time." Perfect time for what? My manager replied, calm, businesslike, the way people talk about anything except a human being. We'll ease her out. Keep everything looking smooth. She'll think it's her own decision. Ease me out like I was some old chair they wanted to toss. Like the life I built wasn't mine. Like I wasn't the reason either of them had their careers, their comfort, their everything. My throat went dry so fast I nearly choked on nothing. My hands, shaking. My stomach, tight. But my face? My face went stone cold. Because this wasn't the first time I had a gut feeling. This wasn't the first time I noticed their weird meetings, their shared glances, the way they'd suddenly go quiet when I entered a room. I just never had proof until that moment. And you know what's crazy? I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just listened. Every word was another knife, but instead of bleeding, I started sharpening my mind. I realized something powerful right then. If two people think they're working against you, they always leave openings. Always. My manager kept talking. She's soft, emotional. We guide her a little. She fold. Oh, so that's what they thought of me? Cute. Really cute. Then my husband laughed. Actually laughed. Like the betrayal was some inside joke between them. And that sound, that laugh, it didn't break me. It didn't shatter me. It built something in me I didn't know existed. This version of me, the one standing in the dark hallway, breathing slow and steady, she wasn't weak. She wasn't confused. She wasn't fragile. She was waking up, the old me, the one who trusted too easily, loved too hard, forgave too much. She died right there, silently, while those two whispered about my exit strategy. But the new me? Oh, I was already planning. Because here's something they forgot. I built everything they're standing on. I know every corner, every lock, every hidden drawer in this entire life. They really thought they could outplay me? Baby, I wrote the damn play. I stepped back into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and acted like nothing happened. Because I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to let them try. And I was going to make sure they never forgot who they were messing with. You ever sit across from someone who's smiling at you while you know damn well they were plotting against you just a few hours earlier? That was me the next morning, eating breakfast with the two men who thought they could quietly erase me from my own life. And trust me, keeping a straight face felt like trying to hold fire in my mouth. I woke up early that day, earlier than usual. Not because I was nervous, but because I was ready. You know that calm before the storm energy? The kind where your brain goes, all right, buckle up, it's showtime. Yeah, that was running through my veins like caffeine and revenge had a baby. I made breakfast like I always do, eggs, toast, coffee. Except this time, I was watching everything. Every move, every glance, every fake smile. My husband walked into the kitchen first, stretching like he didn't spend half the night planning my downfall. Morning, he said, kissing the top of my head like some Hallmark movie husband. Inside, my soul said, don't touch me. Outside, I smiled back. Morning, I replied, sounding so normal I almost annoyed myself. Then my manager showed up, because of course he had a meeting scheduled with my husband. And of course, he acted like everything was peachy and totally not evil. He gave me that fake, warm smile managers use when they want to look supportive. How'd you sleep? He asked. Just great, considering I overheard y'all planning my slow removal like I was an outdated plamp. But, out loud I said, pretty good. You? He shrugged. Busy week ahead. A lot happening behind the scenes. Behind the scenes. Yeah, no kidding. I kept playing the part, the sweet, clueless woman they thought they could manipulate. But inside, I was taking notes. Every single detail. My husband sat down with his coffee, scrolling through his phone like usual. Except now, every time he smirked at a text, every time he tilted the screen away from me, every time he whispered to my manager, I knew exactly what lane he was driving in. And baby, that road had my name on every sign. While they talked business, I just cleaned the counter, quietly listening, because people reveal more when they forget you're in the room. My manager said, we'll bring it up next week. Ease her into it, make her think it's her idea. Oh? So they weren't wasting time at all. My husband nodded. She's been emotional lately. It'll be easier than you think. Let me tell you, if eye rolls could kill, they'd both be ghosts. Emotional? No, sweetheart. I was strategic. I was awake. I was done playing gentle. But the game wasn't to explode. The game was to let them think I was predictable. Predictable people are easy to trap. I stayed quiet, humming to myself, pretending to refill the sugar jar while shamelessly listening to their betrayal unfold like a cheap TV drama. Then something happened. Something small, but big enough to confirm everything. My manager asked, did she sign the renewal papers yet? Renewal papers? News to me. I hadn't seen a single paper this week. My husband shook his head. Not yet. I'll handle it. She won't question it. Oh, sweetie, I'd question everything now, but I didn't flinch. Not even a blink. I placed a plate of fruit on the table like a perfect little housewife and said, anything else you two need? The way they both jumped slightly? Priceless. Guilty people startle easy. It's like their conscience is always waiting for someone to say, we know. But I wasn't saying it. Not yet. Let them sweat later. Right now, I needed information. A few hours later, my manager left. My husband got ready for work. The house got quiet, but not the peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that feels loaded. Before he left, he kissed my cheek. Love you. I looked him dead in the eyes and said, love you too. And oh my God. The satisfaction I felt saying that, knowing what I knew, unmatched. He walked out confident, thinking I was clueless. Meanwhile, I was already on step 2 of my plan, because if two snakes think they're circling you, you don't run, you wait, you watch, and you strike last, but harder. You ever pretend to be clueless just so you can watch people expose themselves? That was me, smiling, breathing, moving like everything was normal, while secretly building a monster of a plan behind their backs. Because if my husband and manager wanted a war, I wasn't just gonna fight it. I was gonna win it without breaking a sweat. The moment the front door closed behind my husband, I dropped the act. My shoulders relaxed, my face fell, and that fake little smile I'd been holding on to all morning, it evaporated. I wasn't sad, I wasn't hurt, I wasn't devastated. I was focused. focused like a woman who just realized her whole life wasn't falling apart. It was being ripped apart by the two people she trusted most. Well, used to trust. Now, they were just two problems with legs. I grabbed my laptop, sat at the kitchen island, and started digging. And let me tell you, when a woman starts digging, she finds everything. First stop, my email, because apparently there were renewal papers floating around that I never saw. And guess what? 20 minutes in, I found them. Not in my inbox, not in my spam folder, but in my archived folder, which I never touched, like ever. Which means someone put them there. Someone with access. Someone who knew I'd never check, and that someone was either my husband or B, my manager. Spoiler alert. They were both logged into my account, but here's the real kicker. The renewal papers weren't renewal papers at all. They were a transfer document. A slow, sneaky, well-disguised transfer of my roles, my influence, my shares, my rights. Basically, a polite way of saying, hey, sign this so we can quietly push you out and take your life's work. I sat back, exhaled, and whispered to myself, oh, y'all are bold. Next, I checked call logs, not because I wanted drama, but because patterns never lie. And honey, the patterns were louder than alarms. My husband and my manager? Talking almost every night. Late. Too late for business. Too frequent for just planning. And not only that, my husband had deleted half his call history from this week. Men always forget one thing. The delete button never deletes everything. There are always traces. Always. Then came the moment where I leaned in closer to the screen, squinting like some detective in a crime show. Financial records. Transactions. Schedules. And baby, that's where their whole castle started crumbling. Because buried in the accounts, hidden under little labels like miscellaneous and office fees, were recurring payments. Not big enough to scream fraud, but just big enough to say, we don't want her to notice we're moving money. Payments going to a consultant I never hired, a company I didn't recognize, and a personal account with initials that didn't belong to either of us. My heart didn't race, it didn't break, it didn't sink. It steadied, because this wasn't two amateurs making mistakes. This was two professionals getting sloppy under pressure. And when people get sloppy, they get predictable. Predictable people are easy to trap. I grabbed a notebook, an old leather one I hadn't written in for years, and I made a list, a long, deadly, quiet list titled, They Think I'm Stupid. Let's fix that. Under it, bullet points. Emails moved, papers hidden, money rerouted, calls deleted, false meetings, late-night strategy sessions, sudden secrecy, emotional narrative, ease her out plan. Signatures they were waiting for. I stared at that list and actually laughed. Not a cute laugh, not a girly giggle, but a real, unhinged, you picked the wrong woman laugh. Because somewhere deep inside me, something unlocked. I wasn't gonna cry. I wasn't gonna scream. I wasn't gonna beg. Nope. I was going to burn their plans so perfectly, so silently, that by the time they realized what had happened, I'd already rebuilt my life without either of them. I made one last decision before closing the laptop. If they wanted to push me out, then I would step aside, just not in the direction they expected, because sometimes you let people think they're winning so they walk straight into the loss they deserve. And I was just getting started. You ever watch someone lie to your face, knowing you've already uncovered every dirty little detail they're hiding? It's wild. It's like watching a toddler try to steal cookies while standing in front of a mirror. You see everything, but you let them keep going just to see how far they'll fall. That was me now, walking around the house like the same old me, while secretly building the kind of revenge that doesn't need yelling, just timing. My husband came home that evening like nothing in the world was wrong. Whistling, relaxed, acting like a man who wasn't plotting behind my back. He kissed my cheek, tossed his jacket on the chair, and said, "You doing okay?" You seemed a little tired this morning. Tired? Oh, sweetheart. Wait till you see tired spelled backwards. Revenge. But I didn't flinch. I didn't give him a pause. I just smiled and said, yeah, just a long night. He nodded, like he believed every word, and in that moment, I realized something important. People who underestimate you don't fact-check anything. They assume your silence equals weakness. They assume your calm means confusion. They assume your smile means trust. It's adorable. Really. Later that night, while he was in the shower, his phone lit up on the dresser. Now listen, I wasn't going to touch it. I didn't need to. I had enough info to destroy a small city. But curiosity? Phew, it whispered. A message from my manager popped up. Did she say anything? She's been quiet. Quiet? Me? Baby, I was quiet the way a storm is quiet before it rips a roof off. Then another message followed. We should push the paperwork this week. I almost laughed. Papers they thought I'd sign? That was cute. But instead of reacting, I simply turned away, took a deep breath, and let the moment pass. Because my goal wasn't to catch them. My goal was to make them think I hadn't caught on at all. I knew the next step, observation, so I started paying attention to everything. The tone of their voice, the small hesitation in their words, the half-truths they threw casually, the unnecessary explanations, the fake concern. My husband would come home and overshare random details of his day, things he never talked about before, because guilty people talk too much when they're scared of being found out. My manager would call me just to check in, acting supportive, overly friendly, asking all the "how are you feeling today?" questions, and I played the perfect part. Soft, unsuspecting, a little confused, a little tired, just enough to keep their confidence high. Because the higher they climbed, the harder they'd fall. 3 days later, the first soft push happened. My manager invited me to a meeting. Nothing unusual, but the vibe? Oh, it was off. He greeted me with this overly gentle tone, like he was talking to a child who'd just lost her balloon. Hey, I've been thinking, he said. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe it's time to lighten your workload. Lighten my workload equals remove my control. Baby, I speak fluent manipulation. Try harder. I leaned back, pretending to consider it. Maybe, I said, letting my voice soften. I don't know. Do you really think that's best? His eyes lit up like a man who thought he'd just scored the winning goal. Absolutely. We can take over some things temporarily. You just focus on yourself. Temporarily, please. They meant permanently, and they thought I'd walk right into it. So I nodded slowly, like the idea was settling in. I appreciate that, I said. Inside, I was screaming with laughter. That night, my husband sat next to me on the couch, holding my hand, fake comforting me like he was the world's most caring partner. You've been doing too much, he said, thumb rubbing circles on my hand. It's okay to let go of some responsibilities. Let go? Of the empire I built? Of the life I created? Of the stability I gave him? Not a chance. But I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I didn't show even a flicker of defiance. Because here's what people like them don't understand. You never interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. And oh boy, they were stacking mistake on mistake. By the end of the week, they both believed it. They thought I was overwhelmed. They thought I was fragile. They thought I was drifting right into their arms. They thought their plan was working beautifully. Meanwhile, I was tightening the snare, because if you want a betrayal to backfire perfectly, you don't just expose it. You let it grow. You let it bloom. You let the betrayers feel in control. And then, you flip everything in one move. One beautiful, silent, lethal move. And trust me, that moment was coming. Faster than they thought. You ever watch people work overtime to betray you? while having absolutely nitrogen monoxide idea you're 10 steps ahead of their little scheme? It's like watching kids play chess without realizing the board's rigged. That was my husband and my manager, busy plotting, busy whispering, busy planning my exit, while I was quietly preparing the biggest plot twist of their lives. The next week rolled in slow, the kind of slow that feels intentional. Every morning felt like the same performance. Fake concern, fake softness, fake guilt, fake affection. They were trying sulfur monoxide hard that I almost wanted to clap for their commitment. Almost. My husband would bring me coffee with this suspicious tenderness like, "You need a break. We've all noticed you've been carrying too much." Carrying too much? Sir, the only thing heavy here was your betrayal. Then my manager would message me updates like he was doing me a favor by handling everything. "Don't worry about the meeting today. I took care of that paperwork. You rest. We've got it handled." Rest? Baby. I was resting the way a lion rests before it leaps onto a gazelle. See, the biggest trick wasn't pretending I didn't know. It was letting them think their plan was shaping up perfectly. Every day I gave them a little more rope, a little more confidence, a little more room to think they were closing in. And the more confident they got, the more reckless they became. And reckless people, they always leave evidence. One evening, I walked into the living room to get a blanket, and there they were. My husband on a Zoom call with my manager, their voices low, like always. Their expressions serious, like always. But this time, they didn't hear me walk in. They didn't notice me standing behind them in the reflection of the TV. My manager said, "We'll present her with the final papers this Friday. She's sign. She's already halfway checked out." Checked out? Honey. I was checked in, checked up, checked everything. Then, my husband replied, "She trusts us. She won't suspect anything." Oh? That's when I realized these two weren't just scheming. They were delusional. They really believed I was completely blind. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything. Screenshots, voice notes, financial inconsistencies, missing emails, call logs, passwords they thought I didn't know, accounts they forgot to hide, plans they didn't know I'd overheard. Every piece was another bullet in the chamber. Because when it came time to strike, I wasn't just going to stop them. I was going to wipe their entire plan off the map. The next morning, I leveled up the act. I walked into the kitchen, looking tired, playing with my sleeve like I was unsure, and said, "I think, maybe you're right. Maybe I do need to step back for a while." My husband looked relieved, like, genuinely relieved. It was almost insulting. "Oh, babe, I'm so glad you're seeing it. This is for your good, for my good." The only thing good here was how smooth my plan was about to unfold. My manager texted an hour later, "Good decision. We'll prepare everything for Friday." Good decision? Your funeral, sweetheart. But the real moment, the moment that solidified their stupidity, came that afternoon. I was in the office going through files when I opened a drawer I rarely used. Inside was a folder, not labeled, not organized, just tucked away sloppily, like someone hid it in a rush. I pulled it out, opened it, and nearly laughed out loud. It was everything, a paper trail of their entire plan. Meetings they held without me, contracts they planned to reassign, a list of my roles labeled temporary replacements, a timeline of when they'd present the final documents, even a stupid little checklist. Get her to sign. Announce her break. Shift leadership. Legal transition. Legal transition. Legal transition of my empire. MY. Position. My status. My work. They were treating my life like a rental lease. I held that folder for a long moment, then I smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Because now, I had everything I needed to end this game completely. Now the most important step was left. Pretend nothing had changed. Pretend I didn't see the folder. Pretend I wasn't about to flip their world upside down. I calmly put the folder back, straightened the drawer, closed it softly. then walked out of the room like I hadn't just found the blueprint to their downfall, because Friday was coming. And Friday was their day. You ever wake up on a day knowing something big is about to happen, but you're the only one who knows the ending? That was me on Friday morning. The day they thought they'd finally push me out, and the day I planned to flip their little scheme straight into the ground. Because they weren't ready. Not for me. Not for what I had prepared. Not even close. Friday started like any other day, at least for them. For me, it felt like standing backstage before the biggest performance of my life. Not nervous, not scared, just sharp. Every sound in the house felt louder. Every movement felt slower. Every minute felt like it was highlighting the fact that I was about to change everything. My husband walked into the kitchen humming, all relaxed, all casual, wearing the confidence of a man who thought the world was in his control. "Big day today," he said, grabbing his mug. "Big day indeed, sweetheart." He poured coffee like he wasn't about to walk into a fire he built with his own hands. "You ready for the meeting?" he asked. I looked him dead in the eyes, calm as a still lake. "Yeah," I said. "I'm ready." And I was. More ready than he'd ever be. Around noon, my manager texted, "Conference room at 4. We'll finalize everything." Finalize everything? "My guy, I'm finalizing you today." I didn't reply right away. I let him sweat. Then I typed, "Okay, I'll be there." Simple, sweet, obedient. Exactly what they expected. The entire afternoon felt like one long smirk hidden behind a poker face. While they prepped paperwork, timelines, signatures, and their scripted, concerned speeches, I was finalizing my arsenal. I packed everything: screenshots, email logs, call records, the money trail, their secret meeting notes, and that folder, the one they didn't even hide properly. Oh, and the best part, I'd already spoken to someone earlier that morning, someone who held more power than either of them ever realized. Not a lawyer, not a friend, not a family member, someone silently watching for months, someone who had already suspected mismanagement but needed proof. And honey, I delivered the proof in bulk. Now all I had to do was show up and let them bury themselves. When 4 p.m. hit, I walked into that conference room with the calm of a woman who had absolutely nothing left to fear. My husband sat on the left, my manager on the right, both with folders, both with rehearsed expressions, gentle, supportive, pitying. Fake pity, fake concern, fake care. They looked like two doctors trying to break sad news gently to a patient. I wanted to laugh. My husband started first. "Babe, we've been thinking a lot about your workload, your stress, your well-being." I held up a finger. "Let me guess," I said softly. "You want me to step back?" My manager jumped in, nodding like a bobblehead. "We think it's best for you. Temporarily, of course. Temporarily." "Sure, Jan." He slid a paper toward me, the same paper they'd tried to hide. "Just sign this," he said, smiling with that fake calmness manipulators love. "It protects you. It protects us. It's the right move." I stared at the paper. Then I looked at both of them. Silent. Expressionless. They exchanged glances, probably thinking I was overwhelmed. Probably thinking I was emotional. Probably thinking this was going to be the easiest win of their lives. Oh, baby. Bless their hearts. Slowly, I leaned back in my chair. "Just one question," I said, voice steady. "When exactly did you two decide I was stupid?" Their faces froze. My manager blinked. My husband's jaw twitched. What do you mean?" he said. I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. "You really thought I didn't know?" I asked. "All the late-night calls? All the missing emails? All the secret meetings? The money transfers you labeled as miscellaneous? The folder you hid in the bottom drawer? The renewal papers you archived from my inbox?" They both went pale. Like actual pale. I wasn't done. I placed my own folder on the table. "Thicker? Heavier. Complete. Everything you planned, I said, tapping the cover. I documented. My husband swallowed. What is this? Proof, I said. Of your attempt to remove me from my own company. Of misusing funds. Of falsifying communication. I leaned forward. And of conspiring against me. My manager tried to laugh it off. This is ridiculous. I slid the biggest piece of evidence across the table. The folder they hid, he stopped laughing. Then I delivered the finishing blow. Oh, and one more thing, I said. I already forwarded ALL of this to the board. My husband shot up from his chair. You what? I stayed seated, calm, collected, untouchable. They're reviewing everything right now, I said, and they'll contact both of you shortly. My manager's face broke first. He looked like someone had unplugged his soul. My husband? He just stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. A woman he couldn't control, couldn't manipulate, couldn't silence. I stood up, gathering my things. You wanted me out? I said quietly. Congratulations. When this is over, you will be the ones out. Then I walked toward the door, paused, looked back. And next time? Choose a smarter target. I left the room, left their plan in ashes, left them drowning in their own silence. And the real storm was only beginning. You ever get the thrill of knowing someone's been lying, scheming, and plotting against you while you've been collecting every single piece of evidence silently? That was me on Saturday morning. The calm before the storm, the moment where patience turns into power, and betrayal finally meets its match. I woke up early that Saturday, not because I had to, but because I wanted every second to count. Coffee in hand, I sat by the window, quietly reviewing the folder I had discovered last week, the blueprint of their entire betrayal. Every line, every note, every date. It was all there. And now, I had the chance to turn it into my weapon. First step? Make them think everything was normal. Because when your enemies are confident, they make mistakes. Big, obvious, stupid mistakes. My husband came in like he owned the house, smile wide, voice casual. Morning, he said. Big day tomorrow, huh? I nodded. Yeah, lots happening. Smiling softly, I kept my tone light, like the sweet, overwhelmed wife they thought I was. Every word, every gesture was calculated. My manager called mid-morning, another fake supportive check-in. Hey, just wanted to make sure you're doing okay. Big day tomorrow with the board, huh? I laughed lightly, pretending a little anxiety, just enough to keep them thinking they were in control. Yes, I guess. I'm nervous. Oh, honey. Nervous is exactly what they wanted me to look. Little did they know. The nerves were just smoke hiding a hurricane. Next, I started the preparation for the final reveal. I made copies of every single piece of evidence. Emails, screenshots, call logs, meeting notes. The folder from the drawer, financial transactions. I even labeled them neatly, ready to hand them over to the board. Every file was ready to destroy their narrative. And just to make sure, I double-checked. The renewal papers they'd tried to push on me? Checked. Signed digitally as a trap. Because now I wasn't just proving their scheme, I was showing their intent, clearly and indisputably. By noon, I acted tired again, subtle gestures, slow movements, distracted expressions. Both of them checked in, my husband hovering nearby, my manager on call. They were so confident, so smug, so sure they had won. The arrogance was delicious. Really, it was like watching someone pour gasoline on a fire and think it won't burn. Finally, late afternoon, I called the board. Yes, we need a meeting. Today, I said, pausing just enough to let them wonder if I was panicking. Board members arrived, neutral, professional. I started the meeting calmly, smiling at both my husband and manager, the smiles they hadn't earned, but I gave anyway. Then I began. I believe some clarifications are in order regarding recent decisions and communications. I handed over the first folder, the one they tried to hide. Then the second, the emails, the screenshots. Then the third, every record of their private calls and financial manipulations. You could see it in their eyes, shock, disbelief, panic. They stammered, they tried to explain. They tried to convince the board it was misunderstandings. But the proof was overwhelming, undeniable. I leaned back, calm as a glacier, and let them flounder. Every excuse, every lie, every whispered hope they had, it collapsed like a house of cards. The board asked questions. I answered truthfully. Every time they tried to speak, I pointed to evidence. Every question they dodged became a nail in their coffin. By the end, the decision was clear. My husband? Reprimanded for mismanagement and breach of trust. My manager? Removed immediately from their position. And me? Restored fully, with full authority over my company and life. I leaned back, exhaled slowly, and smiled. The storm had hit. The betrayal had been revealed. And the people who thought they could remove me had literally removed themselves from any power. It was over. Not with anger, not with violence, but with strategy, patience, and truth. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. People will underestimate you until it's too late. But when you're ready, you don't just survive betrayal, you thrive because of it. You ever go through something that could have broken you? But instead, it becomes the moment you realize how unstoppable you really are. That was me, after exposing my husband and manager, standing in the ruins of their betrayal, but feeling more in control than I ever had in my entire life. The day after the board meeting, the house felt quieter than usual. The kind of quiet that doesn't make you anxious, it makes you aware. I walked through the rooms, imagining how differently things could have gone if I hadn't caught on in time. Coffee in hand, I sat at the kitchen island, the same spot where betrayal first revealed itself to me weeks ago. And I smiled. Because this time, the power was mine. Every corner, every lock, every secret, every decision. I owned it all again. My husband didn't speak much that morning. He hovered, awkward, unsure. Every glance at me was cautious, fearful even. I didn't need to say much. My calmness was enough to make him realize. He had miscalculated entirely. My manager? He barely looked me in the eye, and honestly, I didn't care. He had already lost his position, his reputation, and, in a subtle but real way, his influence over me. It was incredible to see how fast people crumble when the foundations they built on lies are exposed. And the beauty? They did it themselves. Over the next few days, I focused on restoring everything the way it should have been. Emails were reorganized, accounts reconciled, teams briefed, contracts double-checked. Every detail was handled meticulously, the way I had always handled it, before anyone tried to undermine me. And as I worked, I felt something else, a shift in myself. I wasn't just reclaiming my position. I was reclaiming my confidence, my intuition, my respect for my own instincts. I realized betrayal isn't always a weakness. Sometimes, it's the universe showing you exactly who you are, and how strong you can be when the world tests you. My husband tried a few times to explain himself. I listened politely because that's what strategy demands. But inside, I was untouchable. Every word he said was a reminder of how wrong he was, how small his betrayal made him look, and how much he underestimated me. And every time he opened his mouth, my patience quietly reminded me, I didn't just survive this, I orchestrated the outcome. Even my team noticed the change. They came to me saying, "We've never seen you so confident, so calm, so in control." And I smiled, letting them feel safe, letting them trust me even more. It wasn't about showing them I was right. It was about leading with proof, power, and poise. The house that once felt like a battlefield now felt like home again. Not because the betrayal was gone, not because people hadn't tried to hurt me, but because I had turned the game around completely. And the most satisfying part? Seeing them realize, without me saying a word, that I was untouchable. They thought they could push me out. They thought I'd crumble under pressure. They thought silence would make me vulnerable. Instead, I proved patience beats panic. Strategy beats betrayal. Knowledge beats ignorance. Calmness beats chaos. And above all, courage beats everyone who thinks they can play you. By the end of the week, I could finally breathe fully. The house was quiet, yes, but now it was the quiet of control, of safety, of power regained. I had faced the people closest to me, uncovered their deception, and walked out stronger. And I knew no one would ever underestimate me again. Ever survive something that could have destroyed you? And come out not just stronger, but wiser, sharper, and completely untouchable? That was me after everything. After the betrayal, the scheming, the lies, and the showdown. Because now, I understood something vital. Betrayal doesn't define you. Your response does. The morning after the board meeting, I woke up slowly, savoring the peace that had finally returned. The house was calm, quiet, safe, and it felt like my life again. I walked through every room, looking at the spaces where betrayal had once felt heavy, oppressive. But now, those same rooms felt like monuments to my strength. Reminders that I didn't just survive manipulation, I mastered it. My husband didn't speak much that day. He hovered in the background, awkward and cautious, every glance at me tinged with guilt. He had tried to control me for months, thinking I was fragile. Now, he realized exactly how wrong he was. My manager was completely removed from any position of power. He tried calling a few times, attempting weak apologies. I ignored them, because apologies don't erase plotting. Proof does. And I had all the proof. Over the next few days, I focused on rebuilding and reinforcing my control over everything I had built. Business operations, team leadership, financial accounts, contracts, communication with partners. Every step was precise, meticulous, and deliberate. I was no longer reacting to threats. I was proactively securing my empire. And the internal shift was just as important. I realized betrayal is a teacher, not a weakness. It shows you who people truly are. It shows you who will try to manipulate you. It shows you where the cracks in your own vigilance might exist, and how to strengthen them. I became sharper, more assertive, and unshakable. No longer naive. No longer trusting blindly. No longer letting others dictate my life. I also started rebuilding my personal life. I set boundaries with my husband, made it clear that past manipulations were unacceptable. I distanced myself emotionally from those who had betrayed me. I prioritized people who genuinely supported me, friends, colleagues, and mentors who valued honesty and integrity. And in doing so, I found peace. Not superficial peace, but the deep kind that comes from knowing you are untouchable. You are in control. You are safe. You are thriving. The best part? Watching the consequences fall on the ones who tried to deceive me. My husband lost influence in the company he thought he could manipulate. My manager lost everything: reputation, position, and trust. And I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten. I didn't need to stoop to their level. I simply let the truth do its work. That's the power of patience, strategy, and confidence. Observe quietly. Gather evidence. Build your position. Strike decisively. Walk away with your dignity intact. And when people think they can destroy you, you'll realize they're the ones who are powerless. I had learned a hard truth. People will underestimate you until you show them otherwise. By the end of that week, everything was restored. The company, my reputation, my confidence, all untouched by betrayal. In fact, stronger than ever. I had been pushed, I had been tested, I had been challenged, and I had emerged victorious. Ever face betrayal so close to home it shakes your world? And realize the only way forward isn't revenge, but complete mastery over your life. That was me in the final stage, standing tall, calm, and untouchable, as the people who tried to destroy me faced the consequences of their own choices. The morning of the final day of reckoning felt surreal. The air was calm, the house quiet. Even the city outside seemed to pause, as if it knew the storm had passed and a new chapter had begun. I walked through the office, everything in order, every system checked, every employee confident in their roles. My presence wasn't questioned, my authority wasn't challenged, and that confidence, it radiated. My husband tried one last time to justify his actions. I thought it was best for the company, he muttered, eyes downcast. I looked at him calmly. Best for whom? I asked softly. For you? He had no words, because now he knew he had underestimated me completely. My manager attempted to send a last-minute email, a weak apology for the chaos he'd caused. I deleted it, unread. Why waste time on empty words? Actions, not apologies, reveal character, and theirs was exposed fully. I spent the day finalizing every piece of evidence, every record, every note. I handed copies to the board, ensuring there could be no loopholes, no misinterpretations, no excuses. And I walked through each department, speaking to my team personally. Trust yourself, trust your instincts, and know that nothing will undermine our work here. We move forward together. Their respect and confidence in me was immediate, tangible, and reassuring. By evening, the board had made decisions. My husband, removed from any operational influence in the company. My manager, terminated, with consequences for mismanagement and unethical behavior. My leadership, restored fully, with all authority intact. It was complete, absolute, irrevocable. Sitting in my office that night, I reflected, this wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about proving to myself that I am strong, smart, and resilient. That betrayal cannot define me. That manipulation cannot control me. That patience, strategy, and awareness can turn even the darkest situation into triumph. I realized something profound. Life isn't about avoiding betrayal. It's about mastering your response to it. The people who tried to undermine me had done their worst. But their worst wasn't enough. And more importantly, I had done my best, and it had been more than enough. I closed my laptop, took a deep breath, and for the first time in weeks, felt completely at peace. The house was quiet. The office was stable. The people I trusted were intact. And I was unstoppable. From that moment on, I carried a simple truth with me. Trust is earned. Vigilance is essential. Strength comes from preparation, and the ultimate power comes from remaining calm, strategic, and untouchable, even in the face of the people you love most trying to betray you. Because at the end of the day, when betrayal meets preparation, the victor is always the one who stayed patient, collected, and aware. And so my story ended not in despair or loss, but in complete restoration, justice, and empowerment. I reclaimed what was mine, my life, my company, my peace, and I knew without a shadow of doubt that no one would ever underestimate me again.